Our next speaker represents Autodesk, the company that now develops FlexSim worldwide. Pete Majewski has been involved in the integration of simulation solution into Autodesk portfolio and is one of the leading figures in connecting digital twin technology with design and production systems. His presentation will share key roadmap items and explain where simulation fits into the broader digital factory story within Autodesk. Please welcome Pete Majewski to the stage.
Good morning and Dzień dobry. I'm Pete Majewski, or Piotr Majewski, now that I'm in the homeland. I am in business strategy at Autodesk, and I'm responsible for both the digital factory and factory design elements that include simulation capabilities on our current state through FlexSim, as well as our future roadmap as it will evolve into the Fusion Cloud capabilities for all design and make applications. I'm going to start off with the boring corporate piece. Autodesk does ask that we share this at the beginning of any interface like this. Safe harbor statement. Essentially, it's disclosing that there may or may not be sensitive or confidential information in this presentation. Don't make any buying decisions off of it. So whether it's investment or software purchase, so that's just to say, hey, there's some items that aren't as broadly publicly facing yet. But I share those in openness with the team here because the core group of all of the FlexSim power users are what keeps our development going. It's what keeps our teams internally motivated. But most importantly, it is the best means of education for us on the broader software side to become a little bit more well-versed with what the end power users and customers are doing. I like to use this slide. Those that were in the exec briefing yesterday will laugh because it's quite overused on the Autodesk side at times. But I like to use it to establish the way I break out objectives for these types of discussions. When we think through our first two conversations today with Conrad and Gergely, there were 2 points that I took away that really stuck with me. One was the call out for the client interface. So having that owner stakeholder is a very, very powerful theme now in the Autodesk ecosystem, and understanding that end user and that full life cycle of product, process, or asset adaptation after delivery. And then the second was having a strategy, not a shortcut. So what we break out here is the interconnectivity between all of the distinctly different stakeholder groups. So we have the manufacturing teams, the QC teams, procurement, supplier, design, service, et cetera, et cetera. This applies to every industry. So oftentimes we think about the true manufacturing and construction and AEC design, as well as consumer product design, as very distinctly different silos. But I like to present the idea where a lot of our strategy is based now around convergence and creating a data environment and a software portfolio that allows everybody to collaborate at the correct level of detail across the different pieces of the workflow. So I'm not keen to share the environmental percentages and impacts and efficiencies in many of these discussions because all of you are much more well-versed than I am. But one of the things I do find interesting being in Europe for this discussion is that there is much more of an appreciation and a conversation that's front of mind with these types of metrics, whether it's sustainability, efficiency, and that's something special to a lot of the teams here. So not to say that there's one country that does it better than others, but I truly enjoy being able to see the different perspectives and focus from the owner level all the way down to the end user and the software providers that need to take into account some of the things that are happening in the background. I could say the same thing for building impact and operational impact, but where I'd really like to be able to dive into is what we define as our digital factory. So I titled this presentation FlexSim as a Foundation because the takeaway that I would like all of you in the room to leave with is not FlexSim picks and clicks expertise from myself. but the encouragement to look at the broader landscape where FlexSim applies. Internally at Autodesk, there's a huge opportunity for FlexSim to be that driving force with connecting different stakeholders and workflows to achieve what most high-level goals are across our customer portfolios, between time to market, cost to market, time to volume, and all those quantifiable metrics. Collaboration is a key, as well as the continuous improvement that very much mirrors your true manufacturing methodologies. And I'm a big fan of translating everything into a factory lifecycle or a project lifecycle or even asset lifecycle. In the background, especially on the strategy side, that's one of the best ways that we go and articulate how things should connect end to end. Unfortunately, not everything can be linear. We know that there's a lot of confusion that looks similar to the first slide with interconnected departments. But one of the areas that we really try to articulate is our focus on functionality to plan, design, build, and operate, and following this as a standard of a flow as possible, but more importantly, understanding what levels of collaboration need to happen within each group. So there's a lot of abstract and high-level thought that goes into this, and that's on purpose. We use content like this in order to cast the net across many different geographies, many different market sectors, but as it relates to our products, we try to break it into a value stream and a life cycle that connects individual softwares into a much more cohesive platform. So again, here we'll use the same terminology between plan, design, build, and operate, much of which is the exact workflow you're delivering for your customers today. And where we look to plug some of the gaps is making sure that our data models on the software end can be the most efficient and easily accessible sources of information, and most importantly, sources of truth for those in the models every day, or that need to articulate at different levels. We were speaking about the Tableau and the Power BI and the dashboarding earlier, and that's the most common interface across almost all of the owner interface that I get involved with. And that's because you don't always want to take time out of a day or a meeting to go through the picks and clicks of a very detailed high-fidelity model. So the idea here is that our digital factory is taking the right pieces of information, whether it's asset information from a manufacturing line, a schedule from a production department, or that asset operations and maintenance information that needs to be turned over to a building owner. So what we can split out here is what's evolving in the software industry. We have our desktop solutions, which FlexSim would be the prime example in this week's meetings, and then we have our cloud functionality. So to best think through what's happening right now on the FlexSim and the simulation capabilities within Autodesk is think about it as two parallel roadmaps. FlexSim acquisition was 2023. 2024 was meant to make all the introductions that were necessary between the development teams, the sales teams, the legal and marketing teams, and where I play a day-to-day role is managing those operations to make sure that everybody has the right amount of information for what their group is responsible for. So fast forward to 2025, our focus now is really having all the teams broken out into the larger Autodesk groups, which I'm sure many of you have run into both good and bad changes with that, depending on the levels of engagement and familiarity with new names and faces. But the goal there is to really hyper-focus on what's needed on the development end to connect all this data in our digital factory solution. So desktop is our FlexSim roadmap. Our other parallel roadmap would be our cloud functionality in Fusion that is constantly and very rapidly developing to later capture all the simulation capabilities in FlexSim. So there's no date where FlexSim will go away that we have marked on the calendar. I know that's a hot topic with many of the power users. It's part of the evolution to work into Fusion by all means, but think of it as a desktop workflow now that we are looking to optimize into a later cloud workflow. And you could take a second to read the content here, but the way to easily have it make sense would be to show you where our product fit is currently. As of last week, there's a few naming changes. Autodesk University released a few updates with where Autodesk Construction Cloud fits within Forma. That's a conversation for another day, but the main focus of FlexSim being a foundation is around Autodesk Factory Design Utilities and FlexSim interoperability. You'll notice that the products that sound most familiar are certainly AutoCAD and Inventor. The key to utilizing FDU is that you now have the ability to choose where your layout begins. We no longer need to model a layout within AutoCAD and a 2D format input to Inventor or input to FlexSim and then model around it. We can actually start in the opposite direction and start our first analysis within our FlexSim simulation and export that and use that to inform the design of our layout. So that's one of the most exciting topics that has been happening internally. Not just the development on the software side, but the internal education and enablement with our broader teams to understand just how valuable it is to take what is a chicken and the egg of which layout comes first, or do you have to duplicate it, and allow our power users to really have an efficient workflow that starts within FlexSim and has simulation as its core. I was going to do my best not to play too many model animations, and I'll skip through this in a moment. We'll see a lot of other very highly detailed content throughout the day, but I couldn't go without showing a few of the examples of where the workflow efficiency has increased on the Inventor side. If there were to be one takeaway from a product piece that I'm sharing now, is that the FDU connections within our PDMC collection are very powerful for Inventor and AutoCAD users. There will be more Autodesk products added to that as time goes, but as it exists today and was released a few months back, Inventor and AutoCAD have the tightest connection to what a very efficient simulation to later process and line modeling would be from a visual perspective. And the key within FDU is really the asset library. It's synchronized across products, which allows you to drag and drop in each unique environment and have very, very efficient carryovers of information. So the goal there is that you can use FlexSim as a core to break out all of the modeling content, and at the same time, have that be a deliverable for another team member that may be looking at more of the architectural or structural elements of a factory, or a packaged information that may go to product-specific info later. The best way to aggregate our Autodesk integration and our features and improvements is as follows. The key around FDU also mirrors what we've been doing with model management within Vault. Think of that as a central data environment where everybody can see the latest and greatest set and have the appropriate set of project controls. In the future, we'll have the same type of connections that go into Autodesk Construction Cloud / Forma, which will allow a much broader group of stakeholders to partake in model consumption. So that goes back to my point earlier around Conrad mentioning the owner interface. We would love to be able to have the expertise of a FlexSim power user continue to build all the modeling information as you currently are, but what better way to get more immersion than to package that into the right dashboard activities or viewer access so that folks who are not sitting in this room and may never be simulation experts can digest the information and have real-time access to what their digital twin and factory optimization may look like. You'll notice data logger is another common theme with a lot of our updates. That's, again, tied on the back end to our data platform and where all that back end interconnectivity needs to exist. We break out Digital Factory in a bit of a garden path walk around here, and it's because the idea of convergence comes down to a few areas. We have folks that are construction power users, and we have folks that are manufacturing power users, and we're beginning to see a lot of that overlap within the products you see here. So we have Docs, Revit, AutoCAD, Vault, Inventor, Fusion, Fusion Operations, and so forth, and then Tandem from a digital twin perspective. You'll also see Autodesk Workshop XR popping up on sheets like this. And again, it's all centralized data and convergence around many different industries. I typically word it as construction and manufacturing convergence, but as we all know, there's much more convergence happening if we were to draw all of the project stakeholders and owners out. So the idea around digital factory and as it mirrors outside of what typical power users are referring to as factory would be convergence. Inventor to ACC would be the premier example of that. This is more on the construction side where we see many power users using this interoperability to have very discrete manufacturing level detail put into more of an isometric view for construction purposes. And this shows a brief walkthrough of that interoperability between Inventor, AutoCAD, Revit, and push into the Autodesk Construction Cloud. One of the main areas of interest on our customer base, especially those construction, both vertical and horizontal companies, are looking at the way that we can break out the model coordination within our cloud. The value there is that you do not need to be a detailing expert or a structural engineer, architectural engineer, or any sort of systems expert to be able to go and overlap the systems within a model for your coordination. As BIM evolves, which will be a topic in a moment, we see many more customers that are looking to model everything. So not only are they modeling their production lines and simulating the machinery and going through emulation and virtual commissioning and all these other tasks, but there's many folks who are saying, hey, we have an existing building. Why can't we put that into a digital format for later coordination? Which is a bit backwards from your typical BIM workflow. Yeah, a lot of people say if it's existing, we're not going to BIM model it. We're going to do it from a new construction perspective, so whether it's factories or office buildings, data centers, whatever it may be. But now we're seeing a lot of the scan functionality turning into a true streamline to the digital twin aspects. This just breaks it out a little bit more across the products. The data exchange, again, is what's allowing this communication to happen. So this is jumping through the product windows, and this would be a breakout of how all of the components come together in your model authoring location. And this visual is the best example to show how the shared asset library truly optimizes where the same core part and family information can be leveraged in multiple environments. And then you'll see a window pop up where it updates the other model and allows us to directly import to FlexSim and run all of your metrics and animation and simulation. Again, to point out the ACC workflows, again, that's the construction cloud that is in Forma now. Model coordination and clash detection, paramount to that delivery. We see a lot more owner involvement happening in that discussion right now. Not only is it becoming more of a contractual requirement, but it's ease of explanation to change orders or your overall change management process should design iterations occur. We can do that on the project side pretty well in ACC. Where we see a lot of overlap with FlexSim is that we're now able to show the impact of one project change within model coordination from one side of construction into what that looks like on the factory floor because something gets changed or delayed or has a supply chain issue. So I brought it up a moment ago, Scan to BIM is much more of a exciting topic for a lot of the folks that are getting excited about digital factory and factory design. We're breaking out ways of taking as-builts and inputting into live model authoring and collaboration environments. And if we were to narrow our focus down slightly, we get to what we call a integrated factory model, which is effectively the way to expand our production and construction change in a single data platform. Integrated factories at the center, and as you see here, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, the IFM is what allows all stakeholders to collaborate across the cycle and brings us back to our summary of how we plan, design, build, and operate. And that's where I'll wrap up and open for questions.
So just a question, how many big companies right now are using the full platform? Is it already something that is getting common, or right now it's in the testing stage? Especially this connection, for me at least, the connection between the factory floor to digital, to putting the machines on this layout and then digital twin from it, right?
Too many to count in terms of dollar and sector. It's relative. Is this on? It's relative to market sector. So there's many enterprise construction companies and engineers that deployed the whole portfolio. So very common on that construction end. When we break out the factory, this is more of our initial deployment with all that interconnectivity. So we have a few key enterprise accounts that are targeted for the piloting, if you will. But in terms of the core competency of what they deliver, these are really our tenements of how we're building our digital factory structure around.
And this retrofitting of old factories, because that's, in Europe at least, that's 90% of the business in automotive and electronic manufacturing, right?
The retrofit of factories, very common statewide as well, stateside as well. What gets interesting is if you take that factory methodology and apply it to the data center market, where it's the same, very identical workflows and methodologies that tie back to supply chain. And we try to capture the project life cycle for those in both our construction and manufacturing side. So retrofit, very common for existing manufacturing facilities, but a lot of newer facilities now are being looked at as factory operations because of the building monitoring systems, the building automation systems, SCADA reporting, and most importantly, what's happening from an off-site construction aspect, where there's much more of a focus on productized assembly delivery.
So there are many applications in this digital factory platform in Autodesk, but can you tell us really which of them can be truly used for the flexi models? And I don't mean here for the 3D shapes that we can integrate with the layout of the factory, etc. But about the case, about the real modeling, you know, so to use the logic that can simulate the model behavior, and this kind of thing. So what tools are right now integrated and can be used with in these aspects?
The main integrations, you're asking from the software side, like which Autodesk tools?
Yeah. So basically, which tools from the Autodesk platform? No, we can directly.
Oh yes,
they are integrated with the flexi model, not just with the. Not just with the shape and the 3D and the layout, but right. With a logic that the model simulates.
Well, FlexSim is the only simulation capability, so you wouldn't be able to simulate any functionality in AutoCAD or Revit. But that is the existing integration piece. So the layout and asset information is one-to-one. So AutoCAD exists today, Inventor exists today. The tandem piece for digital twin is the current working bridge, and we'll have the same thing true on the Revit and Construction Cloud piece in the near future.
If you're transferring the model from Inventor to FlexSim, you can choose the level of complexity that you are transferring, like simplified model or full model with all the details. Because, for example, we are preparing the full models of the line in Inventor, right? But with all the small details, all the screws, etc.
Yes.
And for FlexSim, it's not necessary, right? They only need the bulk model and the shape of overall thing. And the second question, in Inventor, if I recall, you can also simulate the movement of the mechanism, right, of the robot or whatever, on some level, of course. Can you also transfer this to FlexSim somehow?
Yeah, so that that'd be a little bit more of the animation piece and articulation, but I follow what you're saying. That's a very interesting question because that functionality is being worked on to date, and we consider that our informed design functionality, which is another free offering similar to FDU for interoperability. So the short answer is yes, but the packaging piece of it may vary from customer to customer, or which product is the main focus. Because for FDU, for example, we have a lot of FlexSim power users that use Inventor, and we have a lot of FlexSim power users that use AutoCAD, and there's few that may use both. So there's different perspectives on what happens after the asset information is pushed.
Pete, what was your first impression when you get to know that Autodesk has acquired FlexSim and FlexSim software products, and how FlexSim is important for Autodesk?
Oh, so excitement across the company, especially the team that was most close to the decision and the process and due diligence that was involved. When we think about what it does, it truly educates a much broader part of the company than you probably realize sitting here, because you have so many different market sectors and geographies that are typically siloed. So what simulation did is that it gave everybody a crash course in what can truly be done behind a visual model. And that's the way I like to articulate it, is that Autodesk is historically known for 2D layout, 3D visuals, and yes, there may be bills of material or other attributes tied to it, but to have FlexSim be the best tangible way to say there's mathematical modeling and process that's happening that may not need a visual, it's been a very big education mechanism for us internally.
Just following on from that, from what I saw on there, FlexSim seemed to be in the factory simulation box, so it's after it's in the design part of there. Any plans to extend the capability of simulation into some of the other areas? Because when you look at variability, when you look at 4D BIM, you can take that into supply chain, workforce planning. So in my mind, it can fit in all of the 4 areas there. Fortunately,
I think it's a matter of semantics and marketing. I personally, that's the way I articulate it. I'd say it applies to everything. I don't think it is not just factory. So we put it in factory in terms of the way it's organized and focused on internally at Autodesk. But the reality of it is, it's not just manufacturing, it's not just factory, it's not just construction. We have healthcare modules within FlexSim that go to show how it applies to much broader applications that would seem abstract to a manufacturing view. But yes, I think it's one bite at a time is really what it comes down to. So we're starting with our core user group, and then as it applies to different segments, you'll see a lot more different targeted approaches that may be construction specific, or engineering specific, or healthcare specific, and et cetera.
So thank you, Pete. This was a great insight into a digital factory perspective. Let's thank Pete once again with a big applause.
Thank you all.